The moment Lydia pushed little Sophie out of the path of the speeding car, time slowed to a crawl. The wealthy Harrington family's maid had just revealed herself for who she truly was, but no one could have imagined that by tomorrow, her entire life story would be exposed, changing everything for the family who had never truly seen her. If this story already has you on the edge of your seat, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more incredible stories of ordinary people with extraordinary secrets. Your support helps us bring these powerful human journeys to life. The Harrington household operated like a well-oiled machine. Mr. James Harrington, CEO of a tech company worth billions, his wife Victoria, a former fashion model turned philanthropist, and their 6-year-old daughter Sophie lived in a sprawling mansion in the most exclusive neighborhood in the city. Their household staff was extensive, but among them, Lydia Martinez was perhaps the least noticed. At 42, Lydia was neither young enough to attract attention nor old enough to command respect through age alone. She moved quietly through the halls in her simple gray uniform, making beds, dusting shelves, and vacuuming carpets. Her eyes remained downcast when the Harringtons entered a room, her voice soft when she responded to requests. If asked, the Harringtons might have described her as reliable or thorough, but little else. They didn't know her favorite color, her dreams, or where she went when her shift ended each evening. Lydia, Sophie spilled juice on the rug in the sunroom again, Victoria called out one spring morning, her voice tinged with irritation as she tapped rapidly on her phone. Please take care of it before it stains. Yes, Mrs. Harrington, Lydia replied, already reaching for cleaning supplies. Sophie looked up from her spot on the floor, her eyes wide with guilt. I'm sorry, Lydia, she whispered when her mother left the room. Lydia's stern expression softened immediately. It's okay, Mija. Accidents happen. She knelt beside the girl and began blotting the spill, her movements practiced and efficient. Why does mommy always sound angry when she talks to you? Sophie asked, her innocence cutting straight to a truth the adults pretended not to see. Lydia paused. Your mother is a very busy woman with important things to do. She doesn't have time to worry about spilled juice. She gave Sophie a gentle smile. Now, why don't you tell me about that drawing you were working on? As Sophie launched into an elaborate explanation of her crayon masterpiece, Lydia listened intently, asking questions and offering genuine praise. These small moments were scattered throughout Lydia's days, moments when she was more than just the maid, when her humanity was acknowledged, if only by a child. The Harringtons hosted frequent gatherings for their wealthy friends and business associates. During these events, Lydia and the other staff became even more invisible, floating between guests with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres, refilling glasses before they were empty, removing plates before anyone noticed they were dirty. It was during one such party that Lydia overheard a conversation between Mr. Harrington and a business partner on the terrace. The board is getting nervous, James, the man said, swirling his whiskey. These whistleblower allegations could tank the stock if they go public. It's being handled, James replied, his voice low and tense. The product safety concerns are exaggerated. We've buried similar issues before. Lydia kept her face neutral as she collected empty glasses from a nearby table. She'd learned long ago that staff were treated as furniture, present but not listening, seeing but not observing. That night, as Lydia rode the bus to her small apartment in a neighborhood the Harringtons would never visit, she thought about what she'd heard. The conversation nagged at her, but what could someone like her do? She needed this job, the steady income that allowed her to send money to her aging mother in Mexico and save for her eventual return. The next morning, Lydia arrived at the Harrington mansion at precisely 7:30 a.m., as she had every weekday for the past 3 years. She entered through the service entrance, changed into her uniform, and began her daily routine. The house was quiet, Mr. Harrington had left for an early meeting, and Victoria was still asleep. Around 10 a.m., Lydia was dusting in the library when she heard Sophie's excited voice in the hallway. I'm going to name her Sparkles, and she's going to sleep in my room every night. Victoria's measured response followed. Sophie, we've discussed this. You can't keep bringing home stray animals. The gardener will take it to the shelter later. Sophie appeared in the library doorway, clutching a small, trembling puppy to her chest. Her face was flushed with determination. But Mommy, she was all alone by the gate. She needs me. Victoria sighed, glancing at her watch. I have a committee meeting in 30 minutes. We'll talk about this later. She turned to Lydia, who had continued dusting as if not listening. Lydia, make sure that dog stays in the mudroom until someone can take it away. And don't let Sophie get too attached. Yes, Mrs. Harrington, Lydia replied. After Victoria left, Sophie's brave facade crumbled. Lydia, they're going to take her away, she said, tears welling in her eyes. Lydia knelt to examine the puppy, a skinny little thing with matted fur and frightened eyes. Your mother is right that this puppy needs help, she said gently. But perhaps we can clean her up before anyone decides what happens next. In the mudroom, Lydia carefully bathed the puppy while Sophie watched in fascination. My abuela, my grandmother, she used to take in strays all the time when I was growing up, Lydia shared, surprising herself with the personal detail. She said an animal remembers kindness forever. Where did you grow up, Lydia? Sophie asked, reaching out to pet the puppy's now clean fur. For a moment, Lydia hesitated. Staff weren't supposed to burden the family with personal stories. But Sophie's genuine curiosity broke through her professional reserve. In a small town in Mexico, near the mountains, she said, wrapping the puppy in a towel. Our house was tiny compared to this one, but we had fruit trees and chickens, and I could see stars at night like you wouldn't believe. Do you miss it? Sophie asked. Every day, Lydia admitted softly. That afternoon, while Sophie napped and the puppy dozed in a makeshift bed in the mudroom, Lydia cleaned Mr. Harrington's office. As she dusted his desk, she noticed an open laptop displaying a spreadsheet of figures under the heading Lumina Health Monitor, Incident Reports. The figures showed rising numbers of customer complaints about irregular heartbeat readings and electrical shorts. Below the spreadsheet was an open email draft addressed to the product safety team: delay the recall announcement until Q3. Legal says we need to limit liability. Internal memo only, no paper trail. Lydia stared at the screen, understanding dawning with horrifying clarity. The Lumina Health Monitor was one of Harrington Tech's most popular products, a wearable device that tracked vital signs and sent alerts to users' doctors. It was marketed heavily to elderly patients and those with chronic health conditions. If the device was malfunctioning, people could be making medical decisions based on false readings. People could be getting hurt, or worse. Lydia quickly finished dusting and left the office, her mind racing. This wasn't just corporate maneuvering, this was potentially dangerous. But what could she, a housekeeper with limited English and no influence, possibly do about it? The answer came later that day when she was preparing Sophie's after-school snack. The television in the kitchen was tuned to a local news station, where a reporter was discussing consumer protections. If you have information about product safety concerns or corporate wrongdoing, the state's Consumer Protection Hotline offers anonymity for whistleblowers, the reporter explained, as a number scrolled across the bottom of the screen. Lydia memorized the number, turning it over in her mind throughout the rest of her shift. By the time she clocked out that evening, she had made her decision. On the bus ride home, she called the hotline from her prepaid phone and reported what she had seen. I can't give my name, she told the representative who answered. But people need to know about the Lumina monitors. They're dangerous. The following day proceeded normally until mid-afternoon, when Sophie asked to take the puppy, now called Sparkles despite her mother's objections, for a walk around the gated property. Please, Lydia. Mom's at her spa appointment, and Dad's still at work. No one will know. Against her better judgment, Lydia agreed. Just a short walk, and only in the garden, she said firmly, attaching a makeshift leash to the puppy's collar. The garden was in full spring bloom, with tulips and daffodils creating vibrant splashes of color among the carefully manicured hedges. Sophie skipped ahead, the puppy trotting happily beside her, while Lydia followed at a measured pace, enjoying the rare moment of sunshine in her workday. They had circled the fountain and were heading back toward the house when the delivery gate at the far end of the property suddenly swung open. A car accelerated through, moving far too quickly for the private driveway. Lydia watched in horror as Sophie, distracted by the puppy, wandered into the path of the oncoming vehicle. The driver, looking down at what was probably a GPS device, hadn't seen the small girl. Without hesitation, Lydia broke into a sprint. "Sophie," she screamed, covering the distance between them with a speed that belied her 42 years. In the final moment, she lunged forward, pushing Sophie and the puppy safely onto the grass before the car could hit them. Lydia herself wasn't so lucky. The vehicle's bumper caught her hip, sending her tumbling onto the pavement as the driver finally noticed and slammed on the brakes. Pain radiated through Lydia's body, but her first thought was for Sophie. "Are you hurt?" she gasped, trying to sit up despite the agony in her side. Sophie, clutching the frightened puppy, shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "Lydia, you're bleeding." The driver, a young man delivering a package, rushed from his car. "Oh my God, I didn't see her. Is she okay? Should I call 911? "Call Mr. Harrington first," Lydia insisted, knowing how the family valued privacy. "Tell him what happened." Within 20 minutes, the garden was filled with activity. James Harrington had rushed home from his office, paramedics were examining Lydia where she lay on the ground, and Victoria had returned from her spa appointment, holding a sobbing Sophie. "She saved me, Mommy," Sophie kept saying. "Lydia pushed me out of the way." James knelt beside Lydia as the paramedics prepared to move her to a stretcher. "Why would you do that?" he asked, genuine confusion in his voice. "You could have been killed." Despite her pain, Lydia met his gaze directly for perhaps the first time in their 3-year employment relationship. "She is a child," she said simply. "What else would I do?" At the hospital, Lydia was diagnosed with a fractured hip and multiple contusions. The doctor informed the Harringtons, who had insisted on accompanying her, that she would need surgery and several months of recovery. "We'll cover all expenses, of course," James assured the doctor, before turning to Lydia with an awkward pat on her hand. "Don't worry about anything. Just focus on getting better." Victoria nodded in agreement, though Lydia noticed she kept checking her phone, probably rescheduling the charity gala she had mentioned that morning. After they left, Lydia lay in the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling and wondering what would happen now. Would they replace her while she recovered? Would she even have a job to return to? And what about her mother, who relied on her monthly remittances? She must have dozed off, because the next thing she knew, a nurse was gently shaking her awake. "Ms. Martinez? There are police officers here who want to speak with you." 2 officers stood at the foot of her bed, expressions serious. "Ms. Martinez, we understand you were injured today at the Harrington residence," one began. "Yes," Lydia confirmed, confusion and fear rising within her. Had something happened to Sophie after all? "We'd like to ask you about a call made to the Consumer Protection Hotline yesterday," the officer continued. "A call about Harrington Tech's Lumina health monitors." Lydia's heart sank. They had traced the call to her somehow. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said weakly. The second officer stepped forward. "Ms. Martinez, we're not here to get you in trouble. In fact, we're part of a joint task force investigating Harrington Tech. The information from that call corroborated evidence we've been gathering for months. This morning, based partly on that tip, we executed search warrants at Harrington Tech headquarters," the first officer added. "We've seized documents showing the company knew about the defects for over a year and deliberately concealed them from regulators." Lydia remained silent, years of practiced invisibility making it impossible to admit her role. "The caller's identity remains confidential," the second officer assured her. But we wanted you to know that your actions may have saved lives. 3 deaths have already been linked to the device malfunctions. After the officers left, Lydia closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the day's events. She had acted on instinct twice now, once to protect Sophie from immediate danger, and once to protect strangers from a danger they couldn't see. Both actions had consequences she had yet to fully understand. The next morning, Lydia awoke to find her hospital room filled with flowers. A nurse explained that they had been arriving steadily since dawn, along with cards and small gifts. Most surprisingly, a man from a local news station was waiting to speak with her. "What's happening?" Lydia asked, bewildered. The nurse smiled. "You're all over the news, Ms. Martinez. Heroic maid saves child from speeding car. The Harrington girl's mother posted about it on social media, and it went viral." Before Lydia could process this information, Victoria Harrington herself swept into the room, impeccably dressed and accompanied by a harried-looking assistant carrying more flowers. "Lydia, darling, how are you feeling?" Victoria asked, her voice warm with an affection Lydia had never heard directed at her before. "The surgeon says your operation is scheduled for this afternoon. I've arranged for the best orthopedic specialist in the state to consult." "Thank you, Mrs. Harrington," Lydia replied automatically, struggling to reconcile this solicitous woman with the employer who had barely looked at her for 3 years. "Please, call me Victoria," she insisted, perching carefully on the edge of the hospital bed. "After what you did for Sophie, you're practically family." The word family hung in the air between them, highlighting how little Victoria actually knew about Lydia's real family, the mother in Mexico who had raised 4 children alone after her husband died, the brothers who worked construction in Arizona, the sister who taught elementary school in their hometown. A commotion in the hallway interrupted the awkward moment. James Harrington's voice could be heard arguing with someone. When he entered the room, his face was ashen. "The FBI just left our house," he announced without preamble. "They've charged me with criminal negligence and securities fraud over the Lumina monitors." Victoria stood abruptly. "What? That's absurd. Your legal team will sort this out immediately." James shook his head. "The evidence is overwhelming, Victoria. Someone leaked internal documents showing we knew about the defects." His gaze drifted to Lydia, then away. "The board is asking for my resignation." Lydia lay still, trying to become invisible as she had so many times before in their presence. But this time, it didn't work. "You," James said suddenly, his eyes narrowing as he looked at her. "You were cleaning my office the day before yesterday. Did you see something? Did you make that call?" "James!" Victoria exclaimed. "Lydia just saved our daughter's life. How can you accuse her of..." "Of what?" "Of exposing that I was willing to let people die to protect our stock price?" James interrupted, his voice breaking. "Because that's exactly what I was doing, Victoria. And somehow, our maid, a woman whose last name I couldn't even remember until I saw her hospital forms, somehow she had the moral courage to stop it." The room fell silent. Lydia met James's gaze steadily, neither confirming nor denying his accusation. After a long moment, James's shoulders slumped. "I'm sorry, Lydia. For everything." The news crews arrived shortly after the Harringtons left. Lydia declined all interviews, citing her upcoming surgery, but by evening, the story had evolved beyond her control. Someone had leaked her background to the press, perhaps.